Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave and this is my daily ruling. Today I'm going to cover all the CR updates for the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. WotC usually publishes an article where they do this, but this is something I do every CR update anyway, so I figured I might as well add my analysis to the mix. Besides, a lot of the time they don't actually talk about all the changes, they just highlight a couple of the biggest ones. In this case, there actually isn't a whole lot of changes to cover, so let's jump in and see what's different. If you're going based on volume, most of the changes in almost every CR update are just basic record keeping. Every new set has new cards with new mechanics, and sometimes those will just work right out of the box, but a lot of the time there's going to be some rules updates required to incorporate something. For example, there is a rule that individually lists every single creature type, and this probably holds the record for the CR rule that's been changed the most number of times. There's also one that lists all the artifact types, which doesn't change quite as often, but we did get a new one this time around. Likewise, each predefined token has its own rule that spells out that token's characteristics. And then there's this rule that lists all the different ability words. So since we had a new one of each of those this time around, those rules all got updated too. Recently, the partner mechanic was changed such that Friends Forever, which is really just a reskin of the partner mechanic, but with a different pool of potential partners, actually counted as a variant of the partner mechanic. Partner long dash some text means that you can have two commanders so long as they both have that same specific variant of the partner ability. There is a rule that lists what all the variants that have been used so far are, and the character select one was just added to this list. It's a pity that they couldn't unify all the other variants of this mechanic, such as Doctor's Companion and partner with a specific card, into this partner rule also. If anybody figures out a good way to do this, be sure to let WotC know. Thus far, all the changes have been non-functional. I guess technically they do count as changes, but nothing's actually changing about how anything works. If cards with these types and mechanics had already existed, these rules would probably also already exist, and there probably wouldn't be any reason for any of them to change. Maybe not non-functional, but more like neo-functional. Now let's talk about the functional changes. Well, actually, maybe one more thing that they cleaned up. They modified this rule that defined how putting a creature onto the battlefield attacking works, such that officially they count as an attacking creature only until they're removed from combat or the combat phase ends, whichever comes first. Now, this was how it always worked, or at least how it was always assumed to work. Certainly it's how it has always worked for creatures that were declared as attackers in the normal way during the declare attacker step. But the rule that says so is not worded in such a way that it applies to other creatures that were put onto the battlefield attacking. So technically, if you ninjutsu'd in a creature, that creature would stay being an attacking creature forever, meaning it would have been vulnerable to kill shot even during the following main phase, for example. Now, nobody actually thought that it would really work like this, but now we have a rule that actually spells that out. Props to whoever caught this and got it fixed. I myself have read this section of the CR countless times and never noticed it before. And that's a good introduction to the functional change. In the past, if you put a creature into play after the point where blockers had been declared, well, that creature would not be blocked, but it also would not officially count as an unblocked creature for the purposes of mechanics like ninjutsu. Now, this rule here changes that. It's not hard to realize why this was brought up. If you wanted to return a creature to cast something via sneak, and then you return the creature you just sneaked in to cast something else via sneak, it really feels like that should be something you would be able to do. But if the creature you put in attacking didn't count as being unblocked, well, it wouldn't be possible. Now, hang on a sec. If you were playing back with ninjutsu, you might remember that this was a trick that was possible to do. Now, that's because there was a special call out in the rules for ninjutsu that made it so that the creature that you put in specifically counted as being unblocked. Because of the change that I mentioned, that call out is no longer needed, so it was removed. The last change that I'll talk about is the one where they added in rules for sneak. If anyone from WotC is watching this, I really, really wish you would stop creating new mechanics that are just minor variations on previous mechanics like this. In the first place, anytime someone asks whether they can counter a sneak spell with a stifle, I will have to look it up. And on top of that, we've got this other really annoying issue that we should have. Okay, I guess we're saving that rant for later. So as you can see, Sneak is the one that you can counter with a normal counterspell, whereas Ninjutsu is an activated ability and does not count as casting spell, which means it's the one that's vulnerable to stifle effects. Another difference is that you can only sneak a spell in during the declare blocker step. With Ninjutsu, there was a trick where you could return a large unblocked creature to your hand during the end of combat step, which is after combat damage is dealt. Now that way you could get the big damage from your unblocked attacker, and you would still get your ninja into play. Another rather unintuitive trick was that you could double dip by returning a first strike creature after it had dealt its damage, but before normal creatures got to deal theirs. Both of these tricks still work exactly as before with ninjutsu, but because you can only sneak something during the declare blockers step, neither of them will work with that mechanic. Alright, so there's one last thing that I want to talk about with sneak, and I want to introduce the problem by first showing you my good friend, Force of Negation. Now, let's specifically take a look at that top ability. It says you can cast Force of Negation by paying an alternative cost, and it says this alternative cost only applies at certain specific times. Now, I think we can all agree that if Force of Negation was a sorcery, well, it would be a lot worse of a card because this ability does not give you any special permission to cast the spell at any time when you normally wouldn't be able to. In contrast, notice how this Kasali Ambusher has an alternative cost that says when you can pay that cost, but it also says that if you're doing that, you can cast the spell as though it has flash, because Kasali Ambusher is a creature, and you normally cannot cast creatures during combat. Now let's take a look at Sneak, and it sort of looks like the Force of Negation, doesn't it? The text for Sneak in the comprehensive rules gives an alternative cost, and it tells you when this special cost is valid for, but they left out the part where you have permission to cast a card at a time when you normally would not be able to cast that card if you're paying this cost. So the rules team probably meant to write something like this for Sneak, and this proposed wording would resolve the issue because the time when the cost is payable has been replaced by a time when the spell can be cast for its alternative cost. I expect to see the CR definition for this mechanic being updated to something similar to this in the next CR update, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the reason WotC hasn't yet put out their update article for the TMT changes is because someone pointed this issue out after they committed the new CR and they've been scrambling to figure out what they're going to do to fix it. I'm not really surprised to see this one getting missed. There have been mechanics that let you cast cards for alternative costs before, lots of them, and lots of those let you cast cards only under certain circumstances. Others let you cast cards outside of the time when you would normally be able to cast them. It's somewhat unusual, though, for all three to come together like this, and a lot of the time there is something else that takes care of the problem for you. For example, let's take a look at Madness. If you discard a Madness creature due to hand size, well, you can play it, but no player normally gets priority during the cleanup step, which is when that happens, meaning you can't even play instants then, much less a creature usually. Now, fortunately, if you read how Madness works, officially, you can see that there is a triggered ability that triggers when you discard the card. Now, that's great because those can trigger anytime. The part where you get a chance to cast the Madness card happens during the resolution of this ability. Or here's another example, the OG Ninjutsu. WotC said that they didn't want to bring this one back because people were confused about how it was an activated ability. Well, that may be, but one benefit of being an activated ability was that you can activate those anytime you have priority. You don't have to worry about the sorcery speed restriction. And that's it. Those are the changes in the comprehensive rules this time around. As a judge, and especially as a content creator, I spend a lot of time reading the CR, so the new rules are often at least as exciting to me as the new cards and the new mechanics. I think it's important to understand how the game functions under the hood, and this is a great way to do that. That's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.